Hi, I'm Panda Hershey with Your Full Expression. Welcome to the April 6th Coffee and Charts call, where we talk about how the next 2 weeks will be a bit of an energetic reprieve compared to what we've been through. I also talk about why we might be feeling spread pretty thin these days and why you might not want to be overcommitting for the next few weeks. As always, we'll look at the daily movement of the planets and I'll point out a few key days to pay attention to. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the other side. And I'll just start like this first. As the 3 weeks were passing, I just thought, oh my God, so much was going on. And, part of what was making that hard was that we were going through 4 portals all at the same time and initiating them and learning about what those portals were about, and having to juggle all of that was a lot. And you could see it kind of, in your own life probably, but also in the world. And so we were feeling, I felt at least, spread really thin, because it's like my mind had to be in a million places all at the same time. And so that's part of what I want to talk about at the end of the call today, is what that will come to an end, as it always does, and change and shift. And I'll have some tips for getting through all of that. And I think the good news is that for the next 2 weeks, we get a tiny bit of a reprieve. Yeah, I think I'm ready for that. All right. So I'm going to start with April 4th, which was Monday, and move us through to April 20th when we get together again. But on Monday, I'm starting here because Mars was crossing over Saturn at 22 degrees Aquarius, saying no more. And this has got to stop. And this journey through the Saturn portal is continuing for a few more days. So setting that boundary and understanding how is this going to end, we're getting the idea of what actually has to end. We aren't going to have all the answers. And I hope there's comfort in some of that, because that's really what the whole year is about, is figuring out how you're going to do that. And that is definitely some energy that many of us are feeling these days. On Monday, Mercury also left the Chiron portal at 16.5 degrees. So that's here, Mercury. And notice that the sun is right behind it. And it's about a 2-degree gap right here. And the sun is still in that Chiron portal. And as I sent out in the email, it may have felt very busy over the weekend, and you got a lot of things done. So that's kind of a sense of what that's like when those two energies are together, of just really moving, both of them moving in the same direction, moving forward and ticking off a lot of things. So, one thing I wanted to say is when you put these two energies together of Mars crossing through that Saturn portal in Aquarius and Mercury coming through the Chiron portal, it is like you are setting the strongest boundary you can. But when you try to tell people about it, the message is not landing the way you want it to, or having the effect you want. And I think we've seen that playing out in the world, if you think about Monday. So the next day, tomorrow or yesterday, the sun left the Chiron portal, and we've got that gap of about 3 degrees, and that gap is going to grow. Today, Jupiter enters the Neptune portal. We usually don't think of one larger planet being in another larger planet's portal, but I think this is a unique time, and I'm going to just call it this, and we'll talk a little bit about that. On the 8th, Friday, Mars leaves the Saturn portal, so you will look to this day to see how much stronger, compelling, and more meaningful the boundary that needs to be set is going to be. On the 12th, Jupiter crosses Neptune at 24 degrees Pisces. And as you can see, we do get a little bit of reprieve here. And then on the 18th, Jupiter leaves the Neptune portal and Mercury enters the Uranus portal at 15 degrees Taurus. And then on the 20th, the day we meet again, Mercury, did I say enter? I hope I said enter. Mercury leaves the Uranus portal at 19 degrees Taurus. So, boy, that just seems so short and so easy compared to what we've been through. Let's go back and look again. And there are two things in particular that I'd like you to watch. The first is this gap here between Venus and Mars will widen, and the gap between the sun here in yellow and Mercury in green will also widen. So let's take a look. Okay. So I don't know if it's harder to see with Mars and Venus, but the gap here is over 12 degrees. Remember that they came together at the very end of March and now they're spreading apart. And here, now the gap between the sun and Mercury, by the time we get back together, is about 18 degrees. So remember, they were just together a couple days ago, and now, in 2 weeks, they'll be 18 degrees apart. Okay. So let's take a look at the journal questions in your Retrograde Portals guide. And the Saturn portal, remember, setting that boundary, setting a focus in some part of your life. And for me, it's in my 10th and 11th houses or parts of my life where I'm making an impact on the world and also streamlining the groups that I spend time with it. Mars is making that last initiatory transit through there, coming out of it on April 8th. And the question here is about the enthusiasm or frustration that you may feel as you streamline this part of your life. And you don't have to have the exact answer of how you're going to do it, but it's going to help to know what is the goal here. If we think about the global stage right now, countries are thinking, how do I reduce my dependence on Russian oil? There are a lot of choices out there, or just how do I sever those ties? And it's going to take a year to figure out how we're going to proceed forward, or those countries will decide to do that. But that's the idea, is this has got to go, and I don't have the exact answer, but I'm going to figure it out. And a year from now, things are going to be different. The Chiron portal. So last weekend, we had Mercury cross over the sun. And, as I talked about, when these two things come together in the same direction, this is a great time to work through a checklist or just kind of power through things that need to get taken care of. And because it was through the Chiron portal, there may have been something that either didn't go as planned or got detoured. And so that is the kind of question that I'm thinking about here, rather than necessarily being bothered or hurting other people's feelings. It's more, how do things not go quite the way you expected? And then our first introduction to the Uranus portal. Now, the portal doesn't actually open until early May. And at that same time that it's opening is when the sun is going through it. So we will learn so much more when we get there in May. But with the Mercury passage through that little bit. For me, it's going through my first house. I've been in a state of disrupting who I am for the last couple years, actually. And it's been an interesting journey. But here, just think about, who are you talking to? What are you thinking about in the way you show up in this part of your life? Don't have to have any answers. It's just observing. And we'll learn so much more in May. And then the Neptune portal up here for me, and for you, it will be somewhere else. But Jupiter is passing through. And so this is not something that happens all the time. I was looking back to when it happened, at least that Jupiter and Neptune kind of intersected. And the last time was in 2009, the first year of President Obama's presidency, where actually a lot got done. And before that, it was 1996. So it doesn't happen all that often, about every 12 years or a little more even. And what I'm going to say is that what I'm hoping for is that Pisces helps you feel other people around you. And so what I'm hopeful for is that somehow the world's populations find a way to move forward together. So it's also about, for you and for all of us, it's like a little boost to this Neptune transit of the people that you need to be around you magically showing up, and that little extra oomph to bring them all together. And so it's just maybe a little more expansive than Neptune passing through normally. We'll just have to wait and see what this feels like. And we'll see how it actually starts to show up. But I think, the people that you need are going to be there, and allowing them in is going to be key. And for those of us who have others who are trying to figure out who is supposed to be around them, just observe and encourage and let them know that the people they need will show up. So one key thing is, in particular, if you have something around 24 degrees, this might be a really special thing for you. Just look at that, look in your own list of aspects, your natal aspects, and see what you've got, and look for somehow that extra special magical thing that is expansive and connects you to the feelings of people around you, that this should be quite a year for you. And, at the end of April and in mid-May, as Venus and then Mars move through this portal, there'll be a little more information about what it means for our lives. So, any questions on those before I move on? Okay, so just a few points about experiencing the planet energies. And this past weekend, we had that flip of Mercury now getting ahead of the sun, or passing it, and watching that gap increase. So when the sun was ahead of Mercury, we talked about asking for forgiveness because we went and did something without talking to anybody about it. This time, with Mercury ahead, you will think or talk before doing, which is great, right? You can have a plan. You can think things through before you actually do something. You can brainstorm with people, whiteboard with people. And a potential downside is possibly over-promising, right? You get so excited, you're thinking through, you're thinking out loud, and you're just like, oh God, I can do that. And you might say, I can get all of that done, and then by this time. But remember that gap between Mercury and the sun is increasing. So the follow-up is getting bigger, taking longer and longer and longer to do. So just be aware of that. As time gets further along, what you want to do is give yourself more cushion and not say, oh, I can do that by tomorrow. No, like just give yourself a little more time, and also be aware that the people around you are going to do this too, right? And they're not going to recognize that things will just change and it will take a little bit more time than they had anticipated. And so this energy of Mercury being ahead of the sun is in play until May 21st, when we get into that Mercury retrograde portal and Mercury is coming back over the sun. So the delay won't be as long as we get closer to that, but just know that this is what it's going to be like with Mercury ahead of the sun. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So there are multiple ways to be tired. And I've come up with, and these aren't the only two. One is being really focused versus feeling really spread thin. So what I'm going to point you to is the personal planets like the sun, how we do things, the moon, our instinct to do something, Mercury, how we think or talk, Venus, what we like, Mars, what we go for, those are all observable energies. And when they are in one or two signs, we're really focused on something. So think about, just a new moon where the moon crosses over the sun in the same side. Like you feel, especially if it touches a part of you, a real urge to actually go get something done, start something. And if we look at January 1st of this year, we had the sun, Mercury, and Venus all in Capricorn. And we had the moon and Mars in Sagittarius. And then if you can see that the moon was about to move into Capricorn. So giving us 4 planets there. And that was a time, if you can think back to when you were really focused on getting something done. So this is what focus and the tiredness that comes from focus looks like, right? You get into bed and you're just like, wow, I did so much today. What we're feeling now is a little bit different, because when you've got everything spread out into 4 or 5 signs, you've got so many things going. So think about how, just on a simple example, the full moon, where the sun is in one sign having you go do something, but the moon is in the opposite sign thinking, wait, I need to have some perspective on this. And these 2 sides are calling you in 2 different directions. So if you just take the midpoint of this period that we're in right now, so a week from today is the 13th, we've got Mars in Aquarius, setting a boundary, Venus in Pisces, appreciating the people around us or receiving the people in, the sun in Aries, doing something to stand up for yourself, and Mercury in Taurus, thinking about how I stay steady. And you've got the moon in Virgo, how do I make this right? How do I make this efficient? How do I get it all to, organized? And that is just a lot. And so the tiredness that you feel from being spread thin is like being all over the place and having so much on your plate, all in different areas of your life, that you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to get all this done. So just heads up, this kind of thing is going to get a little better, especially as Mercury starts to go into its retrograde portal here. It will slow down, but we are going to feel a little bit spread thin for a while. So survival tips. 1, be wary of overcommitting or overpromising during the next few weeks. So especially over the next couple of weeks, give yourself more and more cushion to execute. Whatever cushion you think you need today, if you talked about a project, 2 weeks from today, give yourself more cushion to get it done. Be careful of brainstorming with your boss, right? Because the boss is going to be like, oh, that sounds great. I'll take that tomorrow. No. Brainstorm with the people around you, come up with a game plan, and go with a set plan to your boss. So be aware of others possibly overcommitting. And because we're so spread thin, be wary of multitasking. That's how mistakes are made. I think people and myself included, overestimate how well they can multitask. And my own personal technique is to make a list and set a timer. That way every little task feels like they got some time. Delegate or divide and conquer, take turns. And as always, rest when you can. And you can even put that on your checklist and set a timer. So for me, I do that. 20-minute naps are the best, or 20 minutes just closing your eyes is just great. So that is it. I'm going to escape here. Oh, and one last thing. The video about the storytelling is going to be coming soon. I had a question that came in from someone who didn't quite connect with the story for their own personal lives. And so I just thought, oh, well, why don't I just tell the story for that chart? And so I'm incorporating that as an example. And I'm thinking that as we go through the year, that in these extra weeks where we have the 3-week gap, that I may, pull a chart, and you'll see how I do it, where it's completely not identifiable as a person. Take it and talk about how the transits, and specifically where we're at in that moment, applies, and how it looks in the past and where they're going. Because even though we have this awareness of what will happen this year, we still don't know the specifics. Like, you can get a sense of the energy of the direction you need to go. Like, we all get these hunches of, oh boy, I know I can make this happen, or, oh, I can't do that anymore. But how it all happens and how it all unfolds happens day by day. And we learn more each day on how to make that show up in our lives. And nothing is predetermined. So that's why the story keeps evolving. And hopefully I can put words to that each time we have that opportunity. So any questions or thoughts? Seems like a two-week period that seems kind of light compared to some. Thank goodness, we need it.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me. Gonna have to watch out for each day.
Yeah. All right.
Like seeing the ocean.
Well, thank you, you guys.
Any reprieves in sight? How many months or years do we go? Never mind.
As one of my favorite teachers says, it depends.
Fair enough.
Okay. All right, everyone. I love you all. Take good care. I'm always here if you have questions.
Love you, Panda. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you.
2 weeks. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
I hope you feel more prepared to move through these next 2 weeks. We're all feeling spread so thin these days, and so consider using some of my survival techniques to help you through this time. First, be careful of overcommitting, because you don't want to put so much pressure on yourself. And second, and most importantly, rest when you can. If you'd like to join these coffee and charts calls or get your own retrograde portal guide, please visit my website at yourfullexpression.com to learn more. Thanks for watching.